Our topic is about the Anglo-American literature, the ancient period. The United Kingdom and the United States of America have been considered two of the most powerful states in the world for centuries. However, just like any other nation, they have had their humble beginnings and the revolution brought about by colonization, political, social, and cultural changes, as well as technological advancements. This unit will give you a glimpse of these two nations' history that help mold their literature as well as the unique features, elements, and genres of their literature. Now let us have an overview of Anglo-American history. Have you ever wondered how English literature started? Their ancestors did not have any pen and paper, nor any gadget to be able to write their thoughts. Now, how did they manage to have their own literature? Let us find out the humble beginnings of English literature in this lesson. These are the list that traces the key historical and cultural developments in England and the United States of America from ancient times down to the contemporary period. The ancient times. In this period, the Romans found the land inhabited by the Britons or Celts. The Britons or Celts were conquered by the Anglo-Saxons who brought the Germanic language to the land. This language eventually replaced Latin. By 700s, Christian missionaries arrived to convert the pagans, and King Alfred was the first true king of the Britons who brought order and prosperity to the land. Stories are passed down from one generation to another through oral tradition. An example of an Anglo-Saxon hero tale is the epic Beowulf. Now let's move along to the Middle Ages or medieval period. Saint Augustine was the first bishop of Canterbury who converted the Saxons. The Normans also conquered the land under William, Duke of Normandy in 1066, thus the mark of establishment of feudalism. The feudal system was established wherein the vassals or tenants show obedience and loyalty to their lord for providing them security and protection. A product of feudalism is the chivalry. It was an idealized system of manners and morals. This period also was interrupted by the bubonic plague that killed half of England's population. This tragic period was called the Dark Ages. Their works were written in what was called as modern English and not in Latin. This was also the period where vernacular literature, religious writing, and secular text emerged. The genres of their works are heroic tales and romance, and anthology of tales. Heroic tales and romance that tackle chivalry and adventures of knights. An example of this is Sir Thomas Malory's Le Mortier Thor and Sir Gawain's The Green Knight. An example of anthology of tales is the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. The Renaissance period. This was the rebirth of culture that was destroyed by the plague. They also desired to change the old feudalistic beliefs and practices and the face of the church previously tainted by corruption. King Henry VIII established the Church of England. It is also believed that Christopher Columbus was the first explorer to set foot in what is known as the United States of America in 1492. In this period, text shows more optimism despite staying true to the medieval tradition. Text became sophisticated, serious, and concerned with social abuse and rivalry among groups. This was also the period where texts are centered on religious, practical, or historical themes. The genres are lyric poetry, prose or essays, tragedies, and comedies. An example of lyric poetry are William Shakespeare, Edmund Spenser, Christopher Marlowe, and Sir Walter Raleigh's works. Other famous authors were John Donne, Thomas Middleton, and Anne Bradstreet. For the prose and essays, Francis Bacon, Cotton Mather, and Benjamin Franklin. And for tragedies and comedies is William Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe. The Age of Enlightenment, Reason, or the Restoration period. In this period, the Civil War broke out between 1642 to 1649 with Cavaliers. Cavaliers are the king's followers and the Puritans as rivals. And in 1649, Charles I was executed as a result of the Puritans' victory. But the Puritan rule ended in 1660 when Charles II rose to the throne, but the monarch had to share power with Parliament this time. Literary works are known for their use of philosophy, reason, skepticism towards institutions and authorities, and refinement. In this period also, writers wrote with clarity and balance of judgment. For the genres, we have comedy of manners, epic, play, satire, and novel. For comedy of manners, an example of these are William Wycherley and William Congreve's work. For the epic, John Milton's Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. Play by John Dryden, an essay by John Locke. Satire by Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, a novel by Daniel Defoe. The Romantic to Realistic period. This era was Queen Victoria's longest reign as a monarch. The British society became more conscious of their class, morals, and proper decorum. While more people rose to a middle class status, many people sank in poverty as well. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed, and the U.S. Constitution was adopted in 1789, and George Washington became the first president of the Republic. Washington became the first president of the Republic. Writers from the Romantic movement focus on the true, the good, and the beautiful, as well as the expansion of imagination. It also valued the human spirit and love for nature. These eras produce one of the most important documents of American history. One of their genres is Gothic fiction. An example of these is novels by Anne Radcliffe and Mary Shelley. Also, short stories by Edgar Allan Poe. For the lyric poem, William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Alfred Lord Tennyson, Elizabeth Browning, Matthew Arnold, and many others. For another genre is political documents. An example of these are Thomas Paine's Common Sense and Thomas Jefferson's The Declaration of Independence. Novels by Charles Dickens, Charlotte Bronte, George Eliot, and Thomas Hardy. and satirical novels by Mark Twain. Let's move along to modern to contemporary. This period saw World War I and World War II, which caused the death of people and brought economic losses to many nations. In this period, writers made commentaries on the social injustice and the selfishness of the upper class society. For generous and representative writers, novels by George Bernard Shaw, poems by William Butler Yeats, Harlem Renaissance poems by Langston Hughes, and drama by Eugene O'Neill. The elements of Anglo-Saxon literature during the ancient period. Reciting poems were also common during this time. Poems recited during ceremonial occasions such as celebration of winning a war. During this time, poetry, also referred to as early verse, consisted of the following categories. First is heroic poetry. It recounted the achievements of warriors. Lyric poetry expressed the thoughts and feelings of the speaker. And elegiac poetry, the lamented death of loved ones. Elegiac poetry has a melancholic and mournful tone. Elements common to early Anglo-Saxon literature. First is the rhythm. The rhythm contains lines with regular rhythms, usually 4 strong beats. This is an example of a rhythm. The underlined words tale, true, mine, and tells are read aloud with stress. These words have 4 strong beats. Next is alliteration. It is the repetition of stressed sounds and words. They are usually consonants from the beginning of words. This is an example of alliteration. The letter T is repeated in 4 words in the first line. The succeeding line shows repetition of the sound S in sorrows, shows, suffering, and ships. Third is caesura. This is a Latin word which means cutting. It is a sound break in the middle of poetic line and is usually symbolized by a punctuation mark in the middle of the particular line. So this is an example from the opening line of Beowulf. The symbol 2 lines means that this is read with a pause. Pauses in the middle of a poetic line was useful in remembering the lines, since they were expressed orally. Furthermore, these breaks add rhythm to the verse. Next is compounding. Compounding is combining 2 words to create a new word. Compounding was very common in Anglo-Saxon poetry. Example: this word consists of 2 words, fior, which means life, and siok, which means sick. So this literally means life sick, translated as wounded. Fifth is kenning. It is a 2-word metaphorical name. As you can see in the example, Wales is different from road, and bone is also different from house, but they are combined together. Next is variation. It is a technique used to restate a concept or term using a different set of words. So this is an example of a variation. Notice how the steep, rocky cliffs were described as a narrow path, then again restated as a narrow single-file path. Variation. Thank you for listening, and I hope you had fun.